the regular meeting of the Hubbardston Planning Board. The time is 6:38. We have a quorum present in the room. We also have joining us online Francois Steiger and John Demalia. So we have all of our regular members present. We also are joined tonight by the Select Board, which I believe does have a quorum, including one of their members online. So I'm gonna just turn it over briefly to the Select Board Chair to call a meeting.
Thank you. Call the Select Board meeting to order.
Excellent, and I don't think we have quorums of any other boards here, so we'll move forward. So, first on the agenda is public comments. Do we have any public comments for anything that is not already on the agenda somewhere else? Going once, going twice. All right, moving into the, what I believe most folks are here for tonight. We're gonna be having a listening session to talk about what's been called a couple things. It's either been called a rural opportunity overlay, it's been called a rural enterprise overlay. The fact that there's a couple names for it shows you where we're at with it. It's a draft. We're currently working on it. The purpose of tonight's session is order to get feedback from some of our other stakeholders. So I have a brief presentation that I'm gonna give, and then we're gonna move on to the listening session itself and some comments from other boards. So, next slide. So as I mentioned, I'm gonna give a brief introduction, then we're gonna take public testimony for hopefully about 45 minutes or so, then input from the planning and other boards for about 30 minutes or so. Then we'll wrap it up in about 10 minutes after that, have a summary of what we discussed, and then talk about what the next steps are in the process, because like I mentioned, this is a process. It's not an endpoint where we are yet. Next slide. So the purpose of tonight is to discuss a bylaw that was designed to encourage agritourism, farm accessory uses, outdoor recreation, and ecotourism. It's loosely based upon the agricultural accessory bylaws from Rutland and Bolton. There's a couple other towns that we looked at. But ours is going to be, assuming we get one together, is a little bit different than what those towns did, because our reality is a little bit different than they are. And we'll talk about that as we go. It's definitely not a final proposal. It's a working session. The purpose of this session is to obtain public stakeholder feedback to be used for the refinement of the proposed bylaw change. We're here to have the planning board listen to you guys. So there will likely be some questions tonight. Some of those questions may not yet have answers, because this is something that's in development. They'll be noted, and there'll be something that we'll take into account. So next slide. So to talk about how we got to where we are right now, the Economic Development Committee and the Planning Board, I'll go back even further than that. We get reports provided to us from regional planning groups. The lead one is the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission. They help us with a master plan, but there's been other large planning reports done on the town. Specifically, excuse me, the intermunicipal partnership, something or other, that was put together by all the Quabbin towns. And it was actually done by CMRPC, which is a different regional planning agency. And in that, there's also a whole bunch of recommendations. All of these planning documents from all of these outside parties recommend that we look at doing something like this. That we look at something that takes advantage of the open space we have, enables farmers, and encourages people to keep open space open by economically incentivizing them. So, to that end, the Economic Development Committee and the Planning Board went to the Select Board and requested the creation of an advisory committee. And that subcommittee was called the Agriculture Advisory Committee. It was composed of representatives from the Select Board, EDC, Planning Board, and a bunch of farmer stakeholders from the community, many of whom are here tonight. That committee conducted a bunch of research, looked at the policy documents that I mentioned before, and looked at similar bylaws from other towns, and developed a proposal. So the proposal we're looking at tonight is essentially what this stakeholder, Farmer Forward Group, has recommended. So if, we're hoping to hear from some of those folks again tonight as individual citizens, but back from when they were on the committee, we really tried to get that voice incorporated to be our starting point. So, like I said, if anything you take away from tonight, this is a draft, we're working on it. So we also received an individual grant from MRPC called a DLTA grant, and that grant was for additional funding to revise the recommendation that the Agricultural Advisory Committee made. So this has gone through one level of review at MRPC, and they've pointed out some of the zoning questions that have come up, and we've addressed some of those, we haven't addressed some of those. Some of them we want to ask you folks about tonight, see how you feel about it, and take it from there. There is another level of review that the board has to vote on tonight that isn't listed here. Planning board has a consultant that we use for special permits and a lot of our long-range planning work, Places Associates. The planning board is also going to send whatever comes out for a proposal through Places Associates. Although we haven't yet formally retained them, Places Associates took a quick look, and they already have 2 pages of recommendations for some tweaks and adjustments. So we're going to incorporate everything from tonight, incorporate everything from them, and then come back with a more formalized proposal. So on to the next one. So I already talked a little bit about what's going to happen after this meeting. There is going to be an eventual formal public hearing once we have something that we think is a ready-to-go product. So to talk real briefly about agritourism. So agritourism is tourism that brings people to farm enterprise. And farm enterprise is a term that appears in zoning. And that's actually going to run us into one of the first challenges that we faced as a town. Because although we have lots of farm land, most of the folks who run farms in town are doing it as either a second job, a retirement job, or for supplemental income. And the reason that matters is because if we were to put together a traditional agricultural accessory bylaw, we would have challenges with it because those work based upon money. So if you have 200 acres and what you're doing is selling hay off of that 200 acres, you might only be making $12,000 a year. So that's going to make it so if an accessory use is defined as less than 50% of that, you're gonna have a whole lot of limits on accessory use. So we tried to find other ways to look at that and other ways to address it, and we're still tweaking and working with it. Agritourism encourages the purchase of agricultural products, tries to keep forward the farm experience, and is designed to enhance the agricultural viability of farm operations. So the other hope is that we can take some of these folks who are having to work second jobs and help them out a little bit with some ambiguous zoning that we have and we need to fix anyways, and make it a little easier for those folks to make a living. So why? Well, next slide. We already talked about the reports. There's data out there that shows that agritourism works pretty well when you're close to city centers like we are. One of the biggest things that also came out of the process is agritourism also encourages keeping farmland as farmland, because ultimately we have 2 policy devices to use to try to keep farmland as farmland and open space as open space. We can either try to use a really oppressive zoning regime, which the state has told us we can't do, or we can economically incentivize people to keep land open space instead of subdividing it into lots when it could potentially make money as a farm or it could make money as an agritourism, ecotourism business. So next slide. This one is just some data on that was published in 2017 about what ecotourism income's been in the area. agritourism also. Ecotourism and outdoor recreation. For those who don't know, the state has been looking a lot at outdoor recreation to the point of where it has created an entirely new agency. So it's actually on the same, even though it's only 2 people, it's actually on the same plane as DCR. So DCR reports to the secretary, and then the Office of Outdoor Recreation reports to the secretary. At the moment, it's only 2 people. It's run by Paul Janahy, but his mission is to grow out that agency. And that agency is actually where I pulled those examples of outdoor recreation from, because those are some of the examples of outdoor recreation that agency has specifically become charged with promoting. It's worth being in line with some of these state initiatives, because as grants come out, they tend to be grant offerings that are in line with whatever the state initiatives and objectives are. Ecotourism, I put the definition up there because it comes up and it's kind of squishy, but it's responsible travel to natural areas that conserve the environment, sustain the well-being of the local people, and involves interpretation and education.
Mr. Chair, are you accepting questions at this time?
Not yet. Just to try to get through some more of it. So moving down. So these are numbers that come from that new Department of Outdoor Recreation. That department, according to its data, is saying that 9.5 billion of the GDP in Massachusetts and 93,000 jobs is already coming from outdoor recreation. And encouraging outdoor recreation and ecotourism economically incentivizes the keeping of open space as open space. So moving along. So we've talked about the purpose, but this is a slide specifically addressing it. The charge that the advisory committee was given was to encourage economic development and open space preservation fitting the town's rural character, provide opportunities to Hubbardston farmers to supplement and diversify income, provide opportunities to leverage the open space resources in Hubbardston, and encourage regional outdoor recreation, education, and shopping for the residents of Worcester County. So getting into the nuts and bolts of it. So after this, I'm gonna jump to the bylaw for a slide. So what the bylaw does is it creates a overlay on top of the residential agricultural zone. And for those who aren't aware, the residential agricultural zone is everything that's green on that map right there. Because in town, you're either town center, commercial, or your residential agriculture. So there is currently one hole on the map that's carved out, because what the advisory committee did when they created the overlay was we looked at the map and we tried to find places where there was just a bulk of non-conforming lots, or a place where perhaps this didn't make sense. And the place that jumped out right away was Pinecrest, because all of the lots there are non-conforming. So the current recommendation has Pinecrest carved out of it. I expect there's gonna be discussion about other areas, maybe, but that's the way it currently stands on the map. So it then sets 3 buckets of uses. The first one is allowable uses, which are allowable by right uses. Those uses are in line with what the agricultural accessory state laws and what the agricultural accessory bylaws are, because there actually are some state laws that say that you can't really prevent agricultural accessory uses, but agricultural accessory in that point is design is what I mentioned before, less than 50% of revenue. So the next bucket is gonna be uses that that require a certain amount of acreage, because they could conceivably be higher impact. And then there's a bucket of uses that fall under special permit, because they're the highest of impact uses. So let's go to the bylaw itself.
Hold on one second.
lot
I
more.
will zoom in a whole lot more. Oop, too far, I think. There we go. Is that
You can
better?
go in pretty far. So the purpose, we talked about the definitions, I'm gonna skip reading those. Let's talk about the permit procedures authority. So the planning board will sit as the review authority for special permits and site plan reviews as required under the rules. There were some questions that were submitted by email before this meeting about that, so I'll come back to it. Other than that, first-time use is believed to be allowed by right and not requiring a special permit. The applicant shall request review of said use and advice by the building inspector by notifying the building inspector of proposed use at least 30 days prior to commencing said use. Applicant's responsible for all other necessary federal, state, local permits, licenses, all of that stuff, so it doesn't undo any of those requirements. Then moving into allowable uses, because this is really where we get to the interesting stuff. And this is also a place that we're really hoping to get feedback on, because it's challenging to get right. So where this came from is we looked at neighboring towns. We asked our farmer stakeholders what they thought that they might do. And then we had pretty extensive debate about what should be there, what shouldn't be, and this is what ended up coming out of the process. So under these allowable non-exempt agritourism uses, fruit, pumpkin, or related U-Pick, educational and demonstrative tours, agricultural museums, live-in history farms, processing demonstrations, on-farm farmers markets and roadside stands, winemaking operations, winery tours, wine tasting where products are sold or either grown or prepared on site, cider or beer making operations, tours or tastings where products are sold or either grown or prepared on site, distilling operations, liquor tours, liquor tastings where products are either sold or where products sold are either grown or prepared on site, ice cream bakery facilities where products are either grown or prepared on site, outdoor recreation, for example, fishing, hunting, bird watching, game preserve, natural features, horseback riding, art gallery, sculpture parks, aquaculture product sales, beekeeping and honey sales, agricultural stores, services directly supportive of agriculture, for example, agricultural consulting, a farrier, a saddlery, tack and equipment service or repair, sale of agriculturally produced products, greenhouses or nurseries for the raising of flowers or horticultural products. That S right there is actually a pretty good example. A lot of these uses are already required by state law, even though our zoning as it is or was disallowed them, and commercial greenhouses was an example. At our last town meeting, we actually had a vote to change the special permit requirements for commercial greenhouses because state law says it's illegal to require a special permit for a commercial greenhouse. So there's a lot of stuff like that that's left in our uses as they are, and there's some more examples in here of things that are technically allowed under state law, but because of the way the uses are in the rest of our zoning, they're not expressly allowed. So consuming agricultural food products and garden tours. Then we have allowable uses with sufficient acreage. And sufficient acreage is 5 acres or more on a continuous parcel. And that's stuff like corn mazes, crop art, related activities, tours and trail systems for walking, riding, skiing, bicycling, other trail uses. And then this, there was great debate about, so we would very much like to hear about the public from this. These recreational activities shall not involve the use of motorized vehicles except for motorized wheelchairs or similar equipment reasonably necessary to enable disabled persons to use the trails or pedal assist electric bicycles capable of a maximum speed of not more than 20 miles per hour. Petting and feeding of farm animals, hay rides, cut your own Christmas trees. Then here's another one that we're really hoping to get some public feedback on. special events, weddings, receptions, or private parties for a commercial purpose where our events are held less than 4 times per year or are expected to have a maximum capacity of less than 350 attendees. And then G, concerts, festivals, or one-time specific special events where events are held less than 4 times per year or are expected to have a maximum capacity of less than 350 attendees. And the reason that that was set up that way is the specific examples that were discussed at the advisory committee was if somebody has a farm and say somebody just really wants to get married among alpacas not that there's anything wrong with that. That
Know a few.
that's very different from somebody who's setting up like a commercial wedding venue that's gonna sit 300 people and is gonna have a wedding every weekend. Like, one of them is a mild inconvenience at worst to the neighbors, the other one can really be a heavily impactful situation. So that's why we set that line where we did. And at the moment, that's where it's at. We're gonna learn stuff in this process, so please educate us. So the next one is allowable uses by special permit, and these require a site plan and special permit application to the planning board. Although we'll see below, we kind of carved out an expedite, we'll get there. These uses include an on-farm restaurant, special events, weddings, receptions, or private parties for a commercial purpose where our events are held more than 4 times per year or are expected to have a maximum capacity of more than 350 attendees. C, concerts, festivals, or one-time specific events where events are held more than 4 times per year or are expected to have a maximum capacity of more than 350. So these are the flip side of F and G above, where if something is happening more frequently or larger, then that does require a special permit. And as everybody everyone who is interested enough in planning to follow the planning board knows, the special permit process is a fairly rigorous process to go through. So there's a lot of review that goes into it. Next would be rural campgrounds. Lodging other than bed and breakfast, and the reason it's other than bed and breakfast is because in all districts of Hubbardston, bed and breakfasts are already allowed by right. Non-motorized active recreational uses, including but not limited to disc golf, zip lines, and mini golf. So 2, uses allowed by special permit under this article shall submit site plans and special permit applications to the planning board in conformance with Article 9 and Article 7 respectively of the Hubbardston zoning bylaws, with the exception of 9(2)(f), an environmental and community impact analysis should not be required for proposed uses. So that specific analysis is being used as a term of art. So all special permits are reviewed for environmental and community impact, but that is a specific level of work that is done by an engineer and is very expensive. So we made that possible to waive under for those specific uses that are listed under special permit. There's still a whole lot of requirements. Absent from here is a disallowed use or really a disallowed use. And we talked about that quite a bit. And there's actually a bunch of recommendations that our consultant has for it. We haven't officially paid him, we haven't voted to hire him yet, so I'm not gonna go into them yet, but I do anticipate that there are gonna be some disallowed uses. And those are things that we're particularly interested in hearing about from the public, if there's anything that we really need to think of. And we've already talked extensively about commercial composting from Northborough. Using Northborough, the specific example. There's another example of commercial composting for I can't remember what town it was, but there was just a ton of oyster shells that were brought in. And, that actually led to a chain of events that caused all kinds of problems in that community. So, we believe there is gonna be an exclusion for commercial composting with stuff that's brought in off-site that is not specifically part of the ordinary farm operation. But that's gonna require the planning board's engineer to work through the appropriate language on that. But we are aware of that. And then severability is just lawyer speak. So, back to the slides. Alright, so here's the part where we want to hear from everybody who wants to speak. So just from a show of hands, excluding board folks, because we'll have a separate time for people on boards, who's looking to add testimony? Alright, so try to keep it under 4 minutes. Not gonna be super hard about it, but we all wanna get home eventually. So with that said, I think pretty much everybody here has been to a planning board meeting. We all try to be professional and cordial as much as possible. Please try to focus on things that are factual. If you're trying to bring in some specific piece of information, please have a source. That's just how we roll. We already talked, we're gonna be limiting, it's not a hard limit, but please keep it to 4 minutes. And remember that it's a work-in process, so it's not a done deal, so if there's something you hate, just tell us about it. We'll probably change it. And with that said, do you have a list of attendees?
I do have a list of attendees.
Well, let's just start over on this side, so who's first?
I hate public speaking, I'm gonna say that first.
Can you state your name and your address for me?
Rebecca Lloyd. LLOYD. And 155 Williamsville Road. I just came to say that I'm in support of the overlay. I just picked up a business in June in Gardner. It is equine or horse blanket washing and repair. That business had been in the previous owner's hands for over 40 years. She's just recently retired, and I would like to move that business to Hubbardston at my property. So, I'm in support, and that's what I intend to do.
Thank you. Moving same direction along the room.
Can I ask a question? Basically what she said, you know, we're together, David Marsh, 155 Williamsville, and we feel this fits in very nicely with what you're trying to accomplish here as an agricultural accessory, whatever you termed it.
I guess to add to that, I currently have 1 employee, and as the business grows, I could see 3 to 5 employees, so that will bring some business.
Yep. All right, moving along the bench.
Okay, well, I had a quick question. What stops her from doing that?
I don't think anything currently does stop.
So there is a factual conversation to have about what the definition of an accessory use is and how that ends up getting defined. There's also currently a bylaw in Hubbardston that affects domestic businesses, stating no more than 1 non-related employee, which is outside of the scope of what we're talking about tonight, but if anybody wanted to comment about that, we're listening.
Well, I read, look, can I begin my comments?
Yeah,
Yes.
please state your name and.
My name's Tom Robinson. I read accessory uses on the same lot, such as garages, stables, barns, tool sheds, farm buildings and enclosures, tennis courts, swimming pools, are permitted by right in residential districts. It's already here.
Yeah, but this is a business.
That's right.
Right.
That's what this is. In other words,
Yeah.
my general comment, that's a specific. My general comment would be, you're promoting many good things that I believe are already allowed. And if you could go through this list, I request the planning board go through your list of what you're proposing. Determine what's allowed already by right or by special permit, but mostly by right. And cross off those things from the enterprise overlay district and determine kind of what's left. What are the issues? Because all these things are not issues. They're already allowed. I could go read the law here and I'll be glad to do it, but section 4, permitted by right in residential districts, conservation of open space, agriculture, horticulture, floriculture, viticulture, nurseries, orchards, sale of farm nursery products, accessories of the same, I'm skipping words here, but home occupation as defined in Article 2, guest houses, bed and breakfasts, educational uses, accessory dwellings, commercial greenhouses. It goes on and on. So I think we have a solution for something that isn't a problem yet. And it would be very important to me to see that this proposal gets distilled down and does what needs to be done, rather than putting a blanket over the whole town with an overlay district and creating conflicts between what people think they can do and what people, on the other hand, think they can do under the overlay district. I think the potential for conflict, neighbor-to-neighbor discussions, and maybe more than discussions, it leaves yourself, the town wide open to abuse of this overlay district. Also, the state has a guideline for overlay districts. And people have to understand that when you put an overlay district on a section of town, it's intended to address a specific regional concern, solving a problem. For instance, if you have a aquifer and you're trying to preserve the aquifer, you might not want commercial activity, industrial activity, waste producing activity built over the aquifer. But the aquifer might have snuck underneath the commercial district. So you create an overlay district that says, in that part of the commercial district, you can't do that kind of stuff that would contaminate the aquifer. And it's usually aimed at a piece of the town, a special regional solution. When you put an overlay, oh, and by the way, when you do that overlay over that special part of town, it destroys, and I mean that word correctly, it destroys the existing zoning and replaces requirements dedicated to the overlay district. In other words, a person can't come in and say, oh, well, the zoning says I can do an industrial thing on top of the aquifer. I'm gonna do it. And you say, no, you can't. Contrary to the zoning law, the overlay law says you have to avoid doing that in the overlay district. So the overlay district crunches down all the existing zoning laws within the overlay district. Putting an overlay district over the whole town is an abuse of the overlay district concept. You're not solving a regional or a specific area problem. You're laying a blanket over the whole town, and in doing so, destroys the zoning laws. It's really not a good idea. So let's get specific. Find out what you can't do yet, and let's draw up a law that allows these good ideas to be allowable. Don't blanket something. It's too destructive. We've lived neighbor to neighbor under these laws for a long time, and when you wipe out the zoning bylaws, I'm not sure what kind of chaos is gonna happen.
Okay. Well, thank you. Some interesting points. Moving to the next bench. Anybody on that one? Yep.
Kathy Hansgate, 143 Williamsville Road, Ladybug Farm. I'm in support of this bylaw, whether it's called an overlay or not, that would promote ecotourism and agritourism. But I had a couple questions on that one part where you were going to restrict motorized vehicles. And then in this next breath, you said hay rides are okay. What if it's a tractor? You use tractors for hay rides. Why can't you use a tractor for this other purpose that may be needed, for the either recreation and or some kind of agritourism. So maybe look at how that's worded. And then under special permits, my question is, you said it's a rigorous process for a special permit. How long should that process take, and at what point can it be pushed through or not pushed through? You know, what's the time limits on that? For a business, that's important. Whether it's farming or non-farming, doesn't matter. So the time limits, and how that would go smoothly and quickly, when, you know, does it have to go before how many meetings and so on and so forth, in order that it gets done in a timely manner? What would that timely manner consist of? You know, how would that process work? I think it'd be kinda helpful for that to be somehow figured out, so that, if someone wants to come in and do something more than 4 times a year, maybe it's only 5 or 6, do they have to repeat it each time, or is it just one approval for the entire year? You know, let's clarify these things a little bit. That's all I'm thinking. Otherwise, what's in there, I think is good. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Moving along. Next.
Ed Blanchard, 23 East Common Pond Road. Hubbardston has always been a rural community, and a lot of the reason why people move here is because of its rural nature. And I think that a lot of what you're proposing is certainly fit into that rural nature, but, a couple of things that, I've talked to the planning board about in the past, about 2+ years ago, and I think are still part of your regulations that, really put commercial operations in a residential area. One is the solar farm, that you can have 20,000 square feet of solar. The other is you can have a cannabis warehouse, which can be whatever size, and the smell that goes along with it. Both of those operations, 20,000 foot solar and the cannabis warehouse, are commercial operations. And I'm gonna give you this example. I gave it to you 2 years ago. I just moved in a house, Hubbardston. I bought a nice house lot for $75,000. I built a $4,000 home on it. Love Hubbardston because of its rural nature. Next door to me, the person decides to put in a 20,000 square foot solar farm, which is almost half an acre. On the other side of my new house is a cannabis warehouse for processing for commercial use. Both of those operations should not be allowed in a residential area. And I tried to make that important 2 years ago, and I bring it back to you today, because once you start allowing commercial in the residential district, it is a big change to those who are next door to it. So I would just caution you with the rural overlay, that some of these things, especially for farms, because we'd love to keep our farms, keep our agriculture here, and let them be able to make a living off of their farms, I agree with wholeheartedly. But I think you have to be very careful when things like a brewery, so if that's one of your, a brewery or a vineyard, those are commercial operations. And just think about the neighbor next to those operations that you may allow in this overlay district, and would you like to be next door to it?
To a brewery?
Now we know who has a problem. Yeah, I
You won't have it next to the
I
town
could do the
office.
brewery myself, but a lot of people might
I'll
not
come
like
back
the
to you.
traffic that goes along with it.
Excellent. Thanks, just, although this is for the most part listening and not an answer session, just to comment briefly, we did recently, it's still tied up in the Attorney General's office, we did recently make, changes to the solar bylaw that we had in order to make our setbacks and such, enforceable, based upon the lessons we learned from the last couple ones. We actually have on the project list, next time DLTA money comes around, to look at specifically the solar and marijuana bylaws. But it's,
Why do we have to wait for money to do that? The planning board can take a look at that right now. They have the ability and the expertise to be able to put that through without
well,
having help from other people.
we at the very least need to wait for the Attorney General to come back and approve or disallow our edits. They've had them almost a year.
Well, the Attorney General allowed these to be put in. The Attorney General should allow these to be removed.
Yeah.
Just
but
my comment.
They are on the list. I don't wanna go too far down this road, so just quickly.
So Ed, a lot of what you just said, I can kind of debunk right away. The T in DLTA grant is technical, and that's where we run into a lot of these problems with doing something like reviewing an entire bylaw. Whereas the planning board and many boards do have the expertise to look at it from a policy standpoint, they do not have the time, bandwidth, and energy to go in and dive very, very deeply. Neither do the staff members at the current moment in time. Most of our staff has 1, 2, or 3 hats on, so that's where these DLTA grants come in very, very helpful.
We didn't need a grant to put these in place. I don't know why we need a grant to remove them.
Right, well, thank you. Moving along the bench.
Keith Tatro, 130 Gardner Road, Plainview Farm. I agree with the overall picture of what we're trying to do here. And my questions are really what is big and what is not big. And again, it depends on, a lot of things do depend on the property. If you're next door to a brewery that is having tastings and so on and so forth, you're right, it may not be the best thing for a small neighborhood that happens to have a 5-acre lot. So I think those are some of the considerations that we've taken already in our discussions, but we need to make sure that we can flesh them out better. Which also goes along the lines of where the cutoff is for need for special permit and no need for special permit. I just think we need to continue working on that a little bit more.
Moving to the next bench.
Tim Hawley, 35 Mount Jefferson Road. I also support the commission board's efforts to what they're trying to accomplish here. I think it's great. One thought that occurred to me listening to the comments is that maybe there's a lot of allowed by right or allowable uses that we ought to look at what's an appropriate buffer space around those uses. So it seems like it's gonna be a lot more work to do that for each one of those uses, but that'd be a way to try to accomplish what we want to accomplish and without having adverse impacts on neighborhood. I don't know whether this is covered somewhere else, but, you know, solar, wind, and geothermal are potentially valuable sources of income for farmers and other people that own land. And so I hope, even though you didn't mention those, that somewhere the town can continue to allow those, again, with the appropriate buffers so that they don't reduce property values next door. there's a couple of other uses that I didn't hear mentioned that I've heard of in other places. One is, I know a dairy farmer who makes, peat pots out of cow manure. He's got a little assembly line in one of his barns, and he's got a lot of cows, and so, you know what else he has a lot of? He sells pots that he presses out of manure, and, so that's one. Another one, I don't know the name for it, what it's called, but it's a kind of ecotourism where somebody has room, in their house or in a building next door to their house for guests, and people come from far away for a week to see what it's like to be a farmer. So it's not like a bed and breakfast. It's a little different, but it involves residential expansion, so to speak, for these paying guests. Another thought is, in the state, we could use more training facilities for farmers and loggers. We need young people to go into those businesses, and not too many places where you can learn the business, so that would be another potential use that might bring in some income for somebody. I also had a couple of quick questions. Did I hear that if you wanna have weddings every weekend, as long as it's only 349 people, that's okay? Or did I misunderstand?
No, it would be 4 or more events would trigger a special permit requirement.
Oh, regardless of no, okay. And the other thought is, I don't know whether the law allows it, but I'm scratching my head at determining the allowability of this use based on the income from the rest of the property. I don't see any reason to tie it to the other use. Maybe there's something about the new use that needs to be looked at in terms of income. And the same thing with the number of employees. Having to only have employees that are related to you, that sounds antiquated to me. So, if there's a way to get rid of those restrictions, that would probably be a good idea. Thank you.
So I think that was everybody for the first time through, so follow-ups. Well, I believe Tom was first with a follow-up.
For people with a fair amount of land, they often get land poor. And there are a growing number of very good programs. Chapter 61 is probably the most used one. There's a 61A for agriculture, there's a 61 for recreation, 61R I think it's called. There's also federal programs. There's also numerous land trusts and societies like Audubon that have the ability to come in and buy what's called a conservation restriction on your land. You retain ownership of the land, but the land sells its development rights. That's a way of expressing what they do. They give you money, and you give them the right to hold the development rights, so that you can no longer subdivide it and put in a bunch of houses. But you still own it, you can still farm it, you can still timber it, you can still recreate on it, you can still have guests on it, but you cannot develop it. And for that, they give you a fair amount of money. And if you put that money in a reasonable investment, that could carry you well into retirement. Those programs are really good. And I suggest that we, as a town, we publicize them a little more.
They didn't want my land.
Pardon me?
They didn't want my land.
Who did you talk to?
I don't-
DCR.
Was it DCR? Yeah.
Well, DCR is not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Audubon's, Mount Grace Land Trust, North County Land Trust, these companies, or these organizations. Audubon has about $30 million, and they're gonna devote that money to land conservation.
So, I did actually just wanna comment briefly on your earlier comment. There actually was discussion about going through and, essentially working as a revision to the uses that are in, Article 4. The decision ultimately was to start the conversation this direction because it's easier if it's all encapsulated in one discussion as opposed to reopening what would probably turn into 30 or 40 revisions.
Well-
But that's something that isn't off the table and it's still gonna go forward in discussion. I think that was an important comment.
I think it's the most effective way.
Yeah.
I think an overlay district, as you've proposed, over the whole town, will not be looked favorably upon by the powers to be in Boston.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a good mechanism to try to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And believe me, I'm all in favor of the ideas. The ideas are great. I don't wanna see them tripped up by a legal challenge or confusion on the part of the citizenry.
Well, they,
This'll have to come to a town meeting, so.
yeah, well, and it's gonna have to go to public hearing, and it needs a lot more work before then, based upon what we're hearing tonight anyways.
No, these are good ideas.
So, Ed, you had a follow-up?
I was just gonna second, Tom Robinson's, suggestion that we take a look at where the, aquifer areas are and perhaps exclude those aquifer areas, from the overlay.
Yeah, that's gonna be part of the technical review done by Places Associates that I believe actually did the work to set up the aquifer districts that we have now.
That wasn't my suggestion, Ed.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
But that kind of technical review is gonna get looked at. I don't know that specific change is one that would happen because, we were pretty liberal with the designation of aquifer protection. But it's certainly something that's gonna get looked at.
There's not existing maps of, what our aquifer areas are, I believe there are.
There are, but they haven't been updated in 20 years.
I don't think they're.
Yeah.
Can I underscore my real point? My real point was overlays should be used to address specific regional or small area requirements.
Thank you. So I believe we have a whole bunch of board folks that are chomping to comment. But before we get to them, nobody else had a follow-up from the public? All right, so let's
Let us go first before the, open.
So let's move on to the board folks and let's start with Katie.
Alright, so I was one of the ones that sat on the board to help craft this. I also was on the EDC, I sat on the EDC beforehand where this kind of started, yeah. So I also, background, I've been in town forever and I am a hobby farmerist, that's all I, grow food for myself and then maybe sell a little bit at Berry Farmers Market.
Do you have a permit for that?
Yeah. You don't need a permit for that. But I also sit on associations like MA and like I said, Berry Farmers Market, and I know a lot of the farmers in town. I go and I chat with everybody, cause that's the kind of person I am. And not only our town, but other towns, I know a lot of the farmers in the area. There is no money in farming, okay? Farming is very hard. You can't guarantee your crop. If stuff fails, like this year, there was so much rain. The year before, it was a drought. In the spring, we had a frost. I mean, there's so many variables to try to get food to the end, whether it's, your chickens that, you gotta worry about bird flu. There's so many variables that at the end of the day, the farmers work 2 jobs and then come home and do their farm in order to maybe eke out a little bit of extra spending money, realistically. That's a problem for our, not only state, but our whole nation. We don't grow enough food to sustain ourselves. If we don't start grassroots building up to make farmers be able to make a sustainable living and to keep these large swaths of land together as a farm that is in a working status, they will, not only the farms will get carved up and divvied out to turn into houses. Look at Rutland, it's all gone. all gone. The other option is the farmers aren't gonna come because kids today, they're gonna go to college and they're gonna sit in some office and have no idea where their food comes from. They go to the grocery store, they pick it up, they, have it sent to their house by, some delivery person. They don't grow their own food, they don't know how it works. So they're not gonna come here and take over these farms for the people that are aging out. In order to build the farms that we have up, and to also take maybe some of these farms that aren't being farmed anymore, cause we used to be full of farms, we're not anymore.
They're gone.
They have all overgrown. People, if you dangle the carrot a little bit, you might get some of the younger folks to come in that want to try it and try to eke out a living being a farmer, to take over some of these farms that have overgrown and start over. None of this is going to happen anytime soon, even if it passed, say, as is right now, like magic wand, it's gonna happen in June, we got this bylaw to go through. There's not gonna be a huge change. This will take years for people to, first of all, A, build up their farms, or turn a farm into something, or reinvigorate a farm, or somebody to come in to wanna do this. You may have a few pop up that are already existing, like Ladybug or Keith or something, that are already doing something, the winery that we actually do have in town, the vineyard, do something. But it's gonna take a while for even them to grow. So yes, some of this might be scary. Some of this might be, kind of big when you think about it, but look at some of the beautiful, other properties in neighboring areas that people have taken farms and been able to turn it into a business, like Red Apple Farm or Davis Farmland, and like all these lovely farms that are being held intact because the farmers can actually make money. And it will stay. It's not gonna go away anytime soon. But if we don't start thinking about this kind of stuff, Hubbardston won't have any farms. We are a right to farm community. It's sad that we won't grow our own food. We need to eat. So we need to start looking at this, and towns like us need to start taking this stuff into some real consideration on how we're going to get our food. All right, that's enough, sorry.
Thank you.
Moving along the wall.
Whitney Freiberg, and I also am on Economic Development Committee and the Ad Hoc Committee. I think one of the things that we'd like to project to everybody is our feeling of the importance of preserving our farms as well. And from an economic standpoint, what's in my mind oftentimes is if these farms get sold, the next person might not want it for a farm. If there's been business built up on it that would allow them to do something else with the property, and then you can't get it back. And that's another way of losing our farms. So I think that, as we move forward, our committee, and I hope that the town supports us in preserving our farms, not only assisting them and helping them with, additional income, but in actually preserving them, so that they're, so that they'll always be here. They don't need to be sold just for and turned into something. You can't go back. It's like, renting a restaurant and taking the kitchen out. And then you'd always say, oh my gosh, how did I ever do that? I can never put that back in. It's kind of the same thing. You don't want to lose this status or, of it being a farm. You're not gonna get that back. So as we move forward, I hope you support us with that as well, and I'm 100% for what we've created here.
Excellent. Well, Nate, we'll count you on the board side.
All right, I'm a bundle of fun, so I'm gonna talk about economic development and community income. When I interviewed here a year ago, one of the topics I talked about was you don't wanna be that dog chasing every car. You wanna pick a car and go after it. By doing something along these lines, we're taking a economic development opportunity and increasing it to create additional revenue for the community. I've been told time and time again by countless residents that Hubbardston is not interested in this large-scale commercial nonsense or bringing in a ton of houses, and that can be true, but we have to take the little steps that do plug along, because on the other side of that, it's kind of squishing us in the middle, because we don't want the massive industry, but don't raise our taxes. So there's not a ton left except for things like this, going into overlays and looking at what we can allow people to do that will bring in additional revenue. So we have to not only consider this as revenue for the community members that are looking to make additional money and bring business to the area, but looking at it as substantial, potentially, revenue for a town that is struggling in that department.
Moving along.
Okay, I said ditto right now, because that was everything I was thinking of anyway. I mean, obviously, as the select board chairman and the select board, we're tasked with paying the bills for the town and trying to figure out every year how are we gonna afford to not cut people out, this and that and so on. Because quite honestly, as everybody knows, all right, it gets more expensive every year to keep the same things going on, and we are not making more revenue every year as everything else is going up. So that there's a delicate balance here. And listening to the comments of everybody, because I support the idea of what you're presenting, is I would hope, and I've been here for over 20-some odd years now, and on the board for over 11, I would hope that in terms of the regulations and the various permits, et cetera, and Kathy made the point, and I agree totally with the special permit, that we don't make it so restrictive and so long, because I've seen this in the last 11 years where the businesses say, well, the hell with you, I'm going to Westminster. Because my feeling is if we have someone who was interested in having a business in our town, by God, I'd like to be able to do everything we could to welcome them. So I would strongly ask, as a select board person, with what we're tasked to do, that be a consideration as you're taking this draft and dealing with the restrictions and the regulations, to make it a welcome sign as opposed to not wanted.
Thank you.
And ditto to what Nate said.
Any other board members online? I'll go to the planning board next.
Of course.
Not done.
Yeah.
Katie, if you have a quick one?
Yeah, the other thing to go along with this is if a farm grows, along with the farm, if it's something like a wedding venue or, any kind of they have outdoor events or something, along comes with it is other businesses that could possibly grow into town. So think of a wedding venue, even if it was at Plainview, and say it was 50 people every other weekend at a wedding. They need wedding cakes, they need flowers, they need a photographer, they need chairs, they need tables, they need music, they need all these other things that go along with it. If we can start building a business, other businesses around his businesses, the option of other businesses in town have the expansion to grow, something that might not have necessarily taken off in Hubbardston. We used to be known as the vacation spot for Boston years ago. Yeah, there's flyers and stuff, there was hotels, and we were the go-to place and the relaxation. We still are, people just don't know we're here anymore, that's the problem. Where the hell is Hubbardston is a very true statement. So if we can start bringing people back here to spend their money, to have our businesses built up, to have the horse people come in and, the tax that go along with it and all this other stuff that goes along with it, it makes sense. We keep our rural characteristic and our ecotourism intact. We don't get overbuilt, big box stores aren't coming in, and it's everything we want all wrapped into one. But yet we can actually maybe get some money, so that way we don't lose our services at the same time.
Quite
Realistically,
frankly, it's not a bad idea to have your town known as just this wonderful place to go for outdoor experiences, for recreation,
Yeah.
farm
And
visits.
soon we'll
all
have
of
cell
that.
service, so it'll be even better.
Well, in the interest of time, I wanna
Sorry.
get this moving.
To have.
I you had
I
a
was
quick
just gonna make,
follow-up?
I was just gonna make a quick comment on the like, where is Hubbardston, cause I've been living in Mass my entire life. And before 2.5 years ago, we moved out here, I had never heard of Hubbardston.
No.
Right.
I'd
That
heard
we
of-
sell t-shirts.
I had heard of
I got
every
one
town
now.
around
It's a t-shirt.
Hubbardston and had no idea that we existed.
Yeah.
I
And
like it that way.
We do, and I agree with that, I totally agree with that, I think the big box stores, I don't think anybody wants that here.
No.
So having something else to bring people in, to know that we're here, I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
That's all, I was just gonna say.
Can I make a comment, sir?
Well, I'm moving to the planning board now, so,
As being the oldest county here,
Okay, fine, you got me beat.
all right?
You can take
Going back to
that.
what you said before, if you look at the old maps here, the way Hubbardston used to look, Hubbardston was bigger than any other towns around here. We were bigger than Gardner and than any of them. And the only reason why Hubbardston stayed the size it was the town fathers didn't wanna bring the railroad through here. But before that, my mom's house across the street here, that was the Hubbardston Inn, it was huge. They used to bring all the people out here, and the old flyers are still upstairs on the third floor, but nobody ever sees them.
Yep.
Because nobody has access. They advertised all over Boston, people used to come out here and vacation and hunt all the time. And they made a lot of money off of that. I personally, the reason why I like staying on the boards, even though I don't wanna do it anymore, it's too much. But, I don't want too much regulation here to really have so much rules that we have, too many rules. And like this, in the process of this, we need to look at all the rules we have and fine tune them all together. And I think that's important, because sometimes I think we go too far with our rules. The other thing is, Ed, you had made a statement that why do we have to have the professionals look at this and spend the money to have them review it? We're not the professionals, they are. And we've got problems that we're running into now with other bylaws that are in place and other zoning bylaws. We didn't have professionals doing all of that. Why don't we do it right this time, and as a staircase going up, and just kind of bring them all together? I think that's the best thing we can do for the people in the town of Hubbardston, and make it fair for everybody. On the other hand, we need income and taxable dollars for businesses to help pay our bills, but if we wanna bring people into open businesses, what, are we not gonna tax them? Or just give them a break, cause people are gonna complain about that, so it's kind of a fine line between all of that, cause I'd love to see more business in town. And cell service would be great. But I think we gotta be careful how we do it and make sure we balance everything out. And I wasn't part of this, so I don't know. And I think the way this is all going out, what I've read in everything you put out, this is all part of that process, Tom. And you're talking about the zoning bylaws, I think that's what we're trying to do here anyways, to try and kind of put everything together and make it all work.
There's an aspect to this that we're in our own way.
And that
If
happens
we
a
read the
lot.
laws, and we could explain to people what's allowed, much of this logjam would break.
Don't hit anybody, Tom.
alright, other comments from the planning board? How about the planning board online?
I do have a quick comment, and first of all, I want to thank the participants who have very clearly expressed their opinion today. This is near and dear to my heart, even though I did not very closely participate with the presentation. I think you did a very, very good job. Those of you who actually put this together, I love the view of that little goat looking at me at this point in time. It's just kind of interesting.
That's scary.
The point I wanted to make, though, is that this is not something that's going to, with flip of a switch, turn Hubbardston into a mecca for folks to come in and immediately do ecotourism. There's a lot of hard work that still has to be done here. Some of the hard work obviously is ahead for the planning board to take a look at the bad bylaws. I think the bylaws as they stand at this point in time, we've had plenty of experience in the last 4 years that I've been on the planning board. There's a mismatch of not only terminology, but there's things that are contradictory. And I wouldn't be surprised that as we go through this section of the bylaw, we're going to see exactly the same thing. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to not only review these particular sections and make sure that we are, sections I should say, and review and validate that they are indeed consistent. More importantly, that they are presented in a clear and concise manner. One of the biggest problems I think that we have with our bylaw, it is so enormous and it's so complex, so confusing, and in some cases wrong, that it does require that we review it. I do believe that an overlay district always is merited when a new thought and a new process is being presented to a town. In this particular case, this certainly hits the notion. And as a result of this here, I do believe that it makes sense for us to take a look at this here. One challenge that I do leave here for everyone, but also most importantly for Nate, the economic benefit that this brings to the town can potentially be enormous. However, it has to be thought out very, very carefully. The reason is that people can think of this in terms of, yes, I can open up my land, I can open up my farm, I can come up with a lot of interesting and good ideas in which I can supplement my income. The question also comes to bear in terms of what other opportunities are there for the town itself to increase potentially its income base. And that's not necessarily always very clear by some of the things that I've read here, but and that's not necessarily something that we as a planning board need to think about. However, I think by setting the proper foundations and looking at this bylaw and looking at this overlay district, will cement a good foundation on which the town itself can start looking at how do we increment our potential tax bases? How can we get potential revenue either through some form of, I don't know if it's from a taxing perspective or whether or not there are fees or other things that come into mind. And that's again something that I think that the town administrator and other folks, specifically the select board, may take a look at, and hopefully get some good ideas. I think it was clearly said earlier, Hubbardston as a town is never going to attract a Walmart or a big box store, and I don't think many people would want that. And so we need to be a little bit more creative when it comes to how do we grow as a town. And I like this here. We always have to remember, as a crow flies, we're only 55 miles away from places such as the greater Boston area. And people do like to come out. I mean, Massachusetts is a very good example of a place where people like to come to ski. There's a lot of trails. Yes, there's hunting, there's biking, and there's a lot of other things. The question now is how can we turn that into an economic engine? Through the bread and breakfast, through potentially some fine dining and restaurants. And again, this is not gonna happen overnight. But I think to the point of what we have seen here today, this sets the foundation. And by doing good work here and setting a good plan on how we put this bylaw together, how we put this overlay district together will help us foment something that will be very beneficial for the town over the many years to come. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I have one more?
Yes, in just a moment. I just wanted to add to the discussion, and to make sure it gets into the minutes, Article 2, Section 12, the definition of home occupation. That's where it talks about family residing in the house with no more than one resident employee. So that's something that we're gonna have to look at and pull in mind too. And that also is the limiting factor on a lot of the uses in Article 4 as they are now, the Article 2, Section 12. So that's gonna have to get on the list that we look at in order for all this to be compatible.
Christopher, I apologize, but it's really hard to hear you.
Oh, I said Article 2, Section 12, the definition of home occupation is where the home-based business employee restriction is, and some of that other stuff that impacts the Article 4 uses. Nate?
And just to reiterate my point, this is the kind of opportunity that allows my office, the staff here, the Economic Development Committee, and those types of people to then go out and try to sell others on this. In a time period where housing rates are up and house prices are up, the USDA agriculture loans are some of the best rates you can find with some of the best incentives you can find. If realtors around here know, oh, Hubbardston is really into this eco and agri-tourism thing, and they are committed to it and wanna do it, when they hear of those type of individuals wanting to do that type of activity, they know, oh, let's go there, it won't be a problem, versus a long-standing tradition of, stay away from that, it's gonna be a problem. So that's something that I look forward to, cause I've been talking with Whitney and Chris and the select board about, alright, how do we go out and market this? Like, what do we do? And this is one of the ways we could do that.
So anybody else from the planning board online? Anybody else online in general that we might have missed?
Said so.
Alright, so I guess we're moving on to session closing.
One closing comment?
Yep, briefly.
I certainly think it's great to be able to expand our economic base, and because I understand the need for more income for Hubbardston. But I would go back to 1989 when we did the first master plan, and we did a survey of all the residents of Hubbardston, and they came back and they said what they wanted for a town. And I think if you go back to that 1989 one, and there was another one done maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and if you look at what all of the residents wanted, was their rural character. And not that that rural character can't still exist with an overlay district, but I would ask the planning board to maybe go back and look at both of those surveys and say, does the overlay district that we're gonna put through meet the requirements of what the residents of Hubbardston said what they'd like to have as their town?
For 1989, what year was it?
1989.
There's been a couple more recent
There's
ones.
been more surveys.
We have looked at them,
And
that's
I've
where.
looked at those two, and you know what, they're not much different than
No,
the
they're
one in
not.
1989.
No, they're not, you're right. You're right.
There was also some testing about allowable uses in there, that is some stuff that was looked at during the process, and will certainly be looked at again.
Thank you.
As well as the home businesses, there's a lot of
Yes.
questions and answers about that.
Did
the
anybody
amount of
come up with a
people.
number 350 for venue?
It had to be put somewhere so we could start arguing about it.
How about
Is-
200?
Is the best answer.
The-
Yeah, well, if, that's a comment worth adding, putting on the record, and
Yeah.
that we'll look at with our consultant. All right, so I guess with that, just a couple quick closing remarks on the session. Thank you all for coming, that's exactly what we were looking for feedback. I think we got a lot of diverse viewpoints and a lot of interesting ideas on how we should look at this and how we should proceed. And as I talked about, there's a lot more work we're gonna do on this, and I imagine, I wouldn't be totally surprised if it turned into a zoning package instead of, an overlay, or if the overlay map changed, or any variety of things as we work with MRPC and our consultant. So.
Can I have one last request? Can you do it as quick as you can?
Before town meeting.
Please, because
Yeah.
I'm struggling, okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, the goal is to get on the town meeting. So there are, I am gonna make this presentation publicly available, and there are a couple slides at the end of it, that have a list of things that we looked at while we were putting this together, the reports and some of the sourcing. There's actually a couple more things that I need to add to that before we post it up. So I'll get that over to the office.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay to stop sharing the screen?
Yes.
Because the meeting's over?
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure.
All right, so thank you all very much. That was, I'm sure I speak on behalf of the whole board, that was tremendously helpful. I believe that's probably the end of what the select board's gonna be interested in, so, I don't know if you'd like to close your meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Technically, I can't second it, but it's,
Yeah.
it's I'll second it.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from her yet tonight,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, she was there, I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. She's
So,
hiding.
all in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Payne?
Well, thank you
Thank you.
guys for coming. So yeah, we'll be sure to keep the public, posted on what we're doing. There's gonna be additional revisions coming out. Our goal is to get it onto the spring meeting, and, I imagine we'll have another session like this before we do a formal public hearing if we make any substantial changes. Just because it's good to get the feedback in a way where we can all do it constructively instead of fighting about something that everyone thinks is a done deal. So, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And now we have a whole bunch of boring business to get to. Not that minutes aren't awesome.
Please help yourself to cookies and cupcakes and hot
Wait, there
cocoa.
was cookies
Yeah.
there the whole time?
There were cookies there the whole time, I'm so sorry.
You're also welcome to stay if you wanna hear about minutes, an A&R,
No.
and a bunch of administrative matters.
Thank you.
Oh, sure, sure.
On,
On the swimming issue.
Oh, thank you.
Instead of email it, but that's a hard copy.
That's fine.
Yeah, I know.
That was a good show.
Jeff, thank you.
That was a good one. Wow, I'm surprised so many people came.
Oh, what I
Okay.
expected.
Wow.
There were a couple people who reached out to me.
Yeah, no, I like that.
About it,
Yeah.
but after hearing
Good
the
title.
explanation, they're like, okay, that makes sense.
Don't worry, you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, that's from the snowplow story time today. I
Oh.
had 55 kids.
Wow.
Both kindergarten classes came out to see the snowplow, and then I had 15 kids on top of that, which is already an impressive number for story time.
Right, Tom, thank you.
Where we put them all already.
Oh, that's good.
Have a good night, drive safe.
Yeah.
Alright, so moving back to our regularly scheduled program, we have minutes for acceptance. Did everybody get a chance to look at those minutes?
I did.
Yes.
And then, Francois, do you have edits?
I'll look
I do
through.
not. I do not. Thank you for asking though.
That's pretty good, Francois usually has a ton of edits.
Oh.
No, they were done very good. I did have one comment, but not.
Oh.
Okay, it was Patricia's first pass through the minutes, and I guess we actually should have put introduction to Patricia first, but we already started this, so let's go. So up for acceptance, we have the minutes from, what were the dates?
It was 11-4 and 10-3, I do believe. Let me double check on that. Double check. Oh, you guys can't see my email reports, so.
Yeah, I didn't write the dates of the minutes on my note sheet here,
It's,
so.
it's totally fine, I've got it. It is. I'm so sorry, it's in my son. It is, let's see, they are for 11:01
And 10-4.
and 10:04.
Those are ones you had up.
Yep. All right, so going first, can I get a motion to accept the minutes for October 4th, 2023?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
You're in a first and a second, any discussion?
The only discussion on that one is item number 6, matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. I would like to remind the chair, and if at all possible, and I'm not sure that we actually have discussed this here afterwards. It says Member Steiger proposes a question regarding an email from the TA, Town Administrator, pertaining to the budget. Chairman Monroe clarifies that he will add that to the next meeting agenda. I don't believe we have discussed this here. I'm not asking that we discuss this here today, but if you would kindly ensure that we have that as part of our next meeting, that would be good.
Okay.
What part of the budget?
Our budget.
I'm sorry?
There's no budget.
There used to be.
No, I'm thinking, it really had to do with, are we including part of our own budget, the planning board? Is the planning board an item where we receive certain amount of funding. And I do know that we now have a clerk. I don't know how that is being budgeted.
So at this time, you are budgeted under land use with zoning, board of health, and building. It used to
Okay.
have the different broken down departments, but once the positions started kind of molding all into one or two, we did combine it. I did offer to all of the chairs the opportunity to put in anything to be considered. It is a difficult time to consider anything that's not absolutely needed, but I wouldn't have put the offer out if it wasn't something that we were willing to at least hear, so.
Well, that's why I think I wanted to present this here. Again, we may not necessarily get a present in our stocking, we may get some coal, but that's okay.
Well, the timing on this, I can't remember if was 10-4 after we'd had the conversation about the leftover money for the planning board. We do have money.
Yeah.
We don't have budgeted new money from the town.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
then we'll have our income from special permit fees.
All right, fine. As I said, my intention was not necessarily to discuss this here tonight.
Yeah.
I just remember that this was an item that had been brought up, and I don't believe that we had discussed this at all. So if you feel satisfied at this point in time, Christopher, Mr. Chair, with the information that we have, plus the information that you have, and I don't think that we have to take that any further.
And we are doing a fee review at this time. We didn't hop into the planning board yet because I felt I probably should let Tricia get some of the more fun aspects of her job during her first 5 days here and before we hop into the rousing world of fee review, but we are looking at that as well.
Okay.
Alright, yeah, I think we should keep it on the agenda moving forward, but I don't think we have anything to do for it tonight, but thank you for the comment. Any other discussion on those minutes?
No.
Alright, hearing no further discussion, calling a vote, and for you folks online, it's gotta be a roll call vote.
Steiger, aye?
Do we have John online still?
He is no longer here, I think.
Okay, going through the room,
Woman's eye?
Dak eye.
and Monroe, aye, so those minutes are accepted. The next set of minutes is 11/1/23. Can I get a motion for acceptance on those?
I'll make that motion.
Hearing a first, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Hearing a first and a second, any discussion?
Hearing none.
I thought they looked pretty good. I think aquifer might be misspelled in them, but
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
other than that, they look fine.
Okay.
So
I'll
other
just
than
fix that.
the typo, they look like they're good, so calling a vote, starting online.
Steiger, aye?
Woman's eye?
Dak eye.
Monroe, aye. All right, those minutes are accepted.
New
So,
business.
moving down the list, new business, we have an A&R. Do we have anybody here with the A&R?
I'm here, I'm David Leroy, I'm a professional land surveyor with Hannigan Engineering.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry to have the agenda line up the way that it did, but
That's okay.
I hope you're at least billing. All right, so, can you hand me the plans? Can you tell us a little bit about this A&R?
Sure, our client Jennifer Wood, required a piece of land from the neighbor due to the proximity of her driveway, one of her driveways. So lot A1 is a vacant lot, so we're creating parcel B, 2,841 square feet, to remedy that encroachment. And in turn, parcel A gonna be conveyed back out equal area. At least lot 1A with a frontage of 243 feet. And actually adds to the frontage of lot 2. So both lots have area and frontage.
So parcel B, is that part of the, what was it, the old Stevens College property years ago?
I don't know that. Parcel B is part of, lot one, or it was formerly lot one,
Yeah, it's done that.
which had frontage on Morgan Road. So that's the rear of the lot.
Yeah, that's
And
the old,
In turn, we're providing the, exact area back with parcel A.
I believe it's the old Stevens College.
Oh, I know where that is.
Alright, so, for A and Rs, we usually just run down the checklist. So, starting with 1, property boundaries, North Point, date and scale.
Mm-hmm.
North Point, there's the date, and we got a scale. Name of the record owner, name of the record land surveyor, and Worcester County Registry book and page references.
Yeah, the owners are next to the title block. The
Oh.
deed references there.
Oh, okay, thank you. Area of each lot, we got that. Sufficient data to determine location, direction, and length of every street and way line, lot line, boundary line, monuments, or references necessary. Looks like we've got the street and looks like we got that. Where practical, boundary lines of contiguous and adjacent land and names of the owners thereof, as determined from the most recent tax list. Looks like we got that. Location of all permanent monuments, we pretty much just have to take your word on that.
We set all the corners.
Excellent. Location, names, and present widths of non-public private ways, I don't believe there are any.
Don't see any.
Suitable space to record the endorsement, that's there. Zoning classification and location of any zone and district boundaries that may lie within the locus. Yep, zoning residential agricultural. In the case of the creation of a new lot, the remaining land area and frontage of the land and the ownership of the applicant shall be shown. Okay. Location of all existing buildings, including setback, side and rear, well, we're taking your word on that. Location and area of any wetlands on the lots being created by the plan, including the lot being created by the remaining land. In lieu of delineating the wetlands on the remaining land, the applicant may provide written certification from the surveyor or professional engineer who prepared the plan that the remaining parcel of land contains the minimum required upland area required under the zoning bylaw. Do you have the statement on that, or did you delete that?
There are no wetlands on it, so no, I didn't put that statement on.
Okay, so your assertion is that there are no wetlands under the covered area?
Not regarding lot 1A or parcel A and parcel B. Lot 2 being an existing farm.
And does the board have any questions?
No, sounds good to me.
All right, can I get a motion to accept?
I'll make that
Then we just
motion.
need it signed, yeah?
I'll
Here in the
second.
first second,
I'll
any
second.
discussion?
No.
Call on the vote?
Now Francois couldn't see this, right?
Francois,
I don't-
it was in the drive.
This is not, I apologize, but my understanding is that there's no approval required here, right?
He has no approval, it's just accepted.
All we need to do here is just indicate that all of the elements are present.
Yep.
So does that mean we don't need a motion?
No, you don't need a vote, that's my understanding.
We don't need I thought we usually did a motion to
You know
accept,
what?
not approve.
Now that he's saying that, I don't think we've done a motion in the past, have we?
Yeah. No, we don't typically
Doesn't hurt
vote
if
for
we
these.
do.
Here,
Oh, okay.
what we do is we just validate that the inventory of the necessary items are present and that the material that was submitted, satisfies the requirements of an A&R.
Okay.
Good
So,
point.
we don't need a motion for that, let's not do a motion for that.
Okay.
Should we sign?
And you have a majority of the, of the planning board there, so the three of
We
you,
did.
once you sign it, should be able to represent. I would not be able to sign it, obviously.
Okay.
You're gonna sign this thing.
Yeah.
The Mylar.
Right. Sure.
I have the special pens for it, cause I know regular pens don't like it.
Now, just turn it the other way, we gotta, that's how we do it.
Yeah.
You sign it upside down?
No, turn it back the way it was.
Yeah.
I'll go this way, I'm covered with cords over there. Somebody's trying to trip me.
I just like that you guys have snacks. Why don't we have snacks at the
I've
select
never
board
had
meeting?
snacks
Those are
before.
the kindergartners snacks.
I'm just, I don't
Well,
care.
to be fair, Concom got brownies last night. I baked them brownies.
Oh, see,
Oh.
no, see, you're
But
slacking.
since we had
Yeah, I'm
snacks
just
tonight, I'll
saying.
bring snacks next planning board meeting.
We do have a fully functional kitchen here,
I'm
so.
just saying, snacks are good. Especially some meetings really need popcorn, you know. There's some meetings that,
All I wanna say is nobody, as long as nobody starts.
yeah, whatever. As long as it's not a me.
Okay, so I don't have to wait in the minutes of the moment.
Wouldn't
for
shock
the
me at all,
motion,
but
correct?
whatever.
Alright, because there's no need for a motion.
Oh, who made who suggested the motion to start with? Bill, can you just withdraw that motion?
Can
I
we withdraw
will-
the motion
I
for the
will
minutes?
make a motion to withdraw it,
Thank you.
if that's legal.
Thanks. I mean, that way we can be at least be detailed, trying to do the best we can get through this one, we're all just kinda tired of it.
My hand hurts.
All right, so there is a signed Mylar plan for you.
Great,
Thank you very much for coming in.
and thanks for your time.
Thank you for the drawing.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a
See
good
you guys
night.
later.
Take care.
All right, so moving on to administrative matters. Under A, discuss new roles and responsibilities for administrative support to the planning board and for servicing the public. As everybody has probably noticed by this point in the meeting, we have a new person sitting at the table.
We do? Welcome.
We're all very happy to have you here. I mean, it's late and we're tired, or else we'd be more effervescing, but
Oh, I
Totally
heard you
fine, I
kicked him out.
completely understand.
we're excited to have you here.
Okay.
So, Patricia's gonna, what's your schedule like in the office?
My schedule is Monday, Tuesday. I'm here Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, sorry, not Friday. The hours are Monday 9 to noon, and then, but if you desperately need me, I'm doing story hour, so you can join me for story hour. And
Okay.
Tuesday is 9 to 2, Wednesday is 11:30 to 2:30. And then Thursday is 9 to 2 as well, so, I will be available, whatever you guys need, so.
Well, welcome to Hubbardston.
Oh, thank you, I've been here for 4 years, so now I'm just kinda getting into it. My two, attend Hubbardston Center School, and then one's in Hardwick this year for the pilot program for their full-time pre-K, but he'll come back to Hubbardston next year, so.
Good.
Yep, and we're still, well, we're working in conjunction with some of the other administrative stuff we're working on, like figuring out how we're gonna process applications and how they're gonna be handled. We're going to put all of that stuff in writing and come back to the board and public with it, so that it's clear and for everybody to find. But as of the current moment, if somebody has an application, they drop it off with the town clerk.
Yes.
And then the planning board will follow up with them for whatever is necessary.
That's what starts the shot clock
Yep.
anyway, so.
And the goal is that Patricia's hopefully gonna grow into helping us keep some of these strategic projects going, but we're taking it slow to start.
Right, okay.
We changed the job description at the select board level to be more involved in a lot of what was going on. What I've been telling people is Tricia is the land use clerk and helping with special projects. Right now, the only special project we've thrown at her was putting together the inaugural Citizens Academy, or Municipal 101 as I like to call it. But I'm hoping that that grows over time. She'll be our representative with MRPC and other stakeholders like that, just kind of holding their feet to the fire on doing what they told us they would do. And so we'll see where this goes, but so far, 1 week into it, I'm very impressed with what's been going on, so it's good.
We do need to have a motion, assuming you're okay with it. We need to actually vote with the clerk of the planning board.
Oh, okay.
Which is what gives you the authority to actually sign the minutes and do all of that stuff.
I'll make that motion.
So, hearing a first, do we have a second?
I have a second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, calling a vote.
Steiger, aye.
Holman's aye.
Jack, aye.
Congratulations, you are now the clerk of the planning board.
Yay, thank you.
Is there anything else we ought to take care of under that item?
Special thanks to everybody for helping out while we were transitioning between Mark and Tricia. It was a all hands on deck occasion, so thank you.
Alright, so moving down the agenda, the next thing that we have up for discussion is the proposal from Places Associates to help us out with the the Rural Opportunity Project, I guess we'll call it at the moment. Overlay zoning
Overlay
change,
project.
zoning package. As we heard tonight, there's a lot of stuff we still gotta figure out with it. I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. Places put together this proposal. And I don't know why I didn't have it open on my computer already. But Bill put together a proposal for us for going through and reviewing the bylaw, reviewing things like where it conflicts with our current bylaws, advising us on some of the issues related to things that could develop into loopholes or be subject to abuse someday. I think we need the support. MRPC's helped us out a bit, but because of their bandwidth limitations, I don't think they can go the final mile that we need on this. So I think my personal opinion, not as chair, is that we should do this. It was, what was it, 2,500 he quoted us? Where did I put that?
Maybe even slightly less.
Yeah, well, historically, Bill has run below on his estimates for that kind of work for us. There we go. Yeah, so I'd sent it out to the board. Bill already put together a couple pages of comments, and he capped the estimate at 2,500, which includes several hours of review and attending meetings and going back and looking through the notes through stuff like we just had. But I think it's a pretty worthwhile investment in what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get right, because I don't think there's anybody who knows the ins and outs of our zoning better than he does. So if the board thinks it's reasonable, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve that expenditure. We do have, and I guess related to that, we do have the money. We had money that was set aside for us for the master plan that ended up becoming available for us to use on other things. And this counts as one of those other things, and it's 6,500 we currently have, Nate?
6,000.
6,000. You
They
just gotta
tried-
nibble for that extra 5.
Yeah, they tried to bill us and I just kind of said, no.
Yeah.
Like, you're not getting they're like, okay.
So so we have money that we can spend on this, and I think that this is a pretty good place to spend it. So with that said,
I'll make the motion, we spend up the 2,500 for places to review our draft policy on, let me say this right, rural opportunity.
yeah.
I can't say what's here, what was the word you wanted?
No, it's, well,
It just says overlay.
he titled it, proposal for
Proposal.
review,
Okay.
draft rural enterprise overlay. So, yep. Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right, here in the first and the second, discussion. I think we discussed it a little bit ahead of time. Francois, do you have any thoughts to add to it?
Not at this time. I mean, I saw the original proposal that came in. I agree we do need some help. I'm not sure if the numbers are going to be increasing down the road, but I feel comfortable with having Bill take a look at this here first and come with an initial assessment. I would suggest that once we have that, we can then make a determination if additional work is required potentially down the road. As we heard from today's meeting, we may get significant feedback afterwards that
Yep.
may require us to do some additional work on this.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I think if it turns out that we have to do a whole bunch of stuff, I would suggest at that point that we would actually start a subcommittee, especially if it overlapped with the end of December or early part of January.
Yeah.
Which also raises as an issue, well, I'll come back to it after this, under matters not reasonably anticipated by chair. So yeah, there's other ways to deal with anything else that comes up after the fact. So, any further comment on the proposal?
Because timing wise, you'll want this in the public hearing phase by what, February?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so, further discussion? Alright, calling a vote, starting online.
Steiger, aye?
Holman's eye.
Dak, aye.
Monroe, aye. The proposal is approved. We have an outstanding bill for Places Associates. It was for, I thought I had put that in the folder.
Is that bill inside of one of our folders?
Yeah, I thought it was, but I'm not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it either, that's why I'm asking the question, so.
Yeah, maybe it didn't get in there. Nate, do you remember what it was for?
I'm looking back, 1,500 is sticking out of my head, that's why I thought it was, the other bill was lower, but I'm looking for the email from Nancy.
I found it. So, it's a statement from November 1st, invoice 5464, Town of Hubbardston Planning Board, Gardner Road. Originally due 10/27/2003, amount 1488.
Can I ask where that invoice is, and is it in our folders?
Well, that's the statement. I'm going back to look for the actual invoice.
Cell tower?
Yeah, I think it was related to the cell tower.
Oh, it's Gardner Road, so.
Yeah, it is related to the cell tower.
So we should still have monies available from the cell tower, right?
Yeah, so it would be invoice 5464, 1488, and, yeah, 1488, review of cell tower, the initial inspection, all of that stuff.
Where can I find this?
I'm putting it in the drive now.
Oh, thank you.
Which raises the question, who currently has, who has the ledger of what money we are holding for people?
That be on the detail list?
I don't know that it would be.
I don't think it is either.
There is a ledger right now in one of our folders. I don't know how current it is.
Because I don't believe without further breakdown by Kelly, if I was
122,
to check the
it
budget
ends on
versus actual
62,
report, it
3.
would come out.
Alright, so I put the invoice in the drive. Where are you saying it is, Francois?
If you look at the folder for the prior meeting we had, 1019-OCT 19.
Yep.
Statements, there's a subfolder there. There are 4 PDF files, one for each fiscal year. And the fiscal year 23 is the latest one that we have, that's all.
Yeah, that's just the general ledger though.
That's right, that's all I have.
Yeah, I guess we could go through that with the calculator and. Yeah, somewhere there should be an accounting of what we're currently holding for industrial tower.
Would it be any different from the time period when UI and Kelly went over what you had and came to the conclusion that we could use the master plan money? So I have a breakdown from then. That was 2 months ago.
Maybe. Cause I don't know if it goes into our regular revolving account or if there's another revolving account. I mean, could we do a, could we do a contingent motion where we approve it subject to having collected the money? Is that possible to do?
Make a motion to say we're gonna pay the bill as long as we collected it from the tower company.
Yeah, assuming that there's matching funds that we're currently holding in escrow. Cause if not, we need
So I
to.
pay all my bills?
Because if we're not
Yeah.
holding the money, we need to get the money
Assuming-
from them.
Assuming I get paid, I'll pay you.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
What you just put up on the drive?
Yeah.
I see both a statement and I see an invoice. The statement is for $773.50 for the Demalia cell tower. And then the other one is for the self-storage. I'm assuming these are two separate things, right? So
I mean,
both of which should have funds somewhere.
I mean,
I'm assuming both are due.
maybe we can't do this at this meeting, we just have to wait for the next one and figure out what's going on with this. Now that Nate and Patricia more so know what the question
This is from October 12th. I believe you spent any money. I'll print it for you.
Yeah, was anything paid after that though?
Yeah, cause I thought we approved, well, there should just be a ledger.
Yep, that's what I'm getting.
Okay. This really is the toughest unpaid job I've ever had, other than parenting. I mean, which ledger, what is it?
That's the October 12th ledger.
Yeah.
Riveting meeting.
I think we're gonna have to look into it more, because I see that there's money in the account, but I don't know who goes to what, and I know there's leftover money from a bunch of projects. So I think we're gonna have to research it a bit more, cause there were, I think there was a little bit of money left over from, one of the cannabis businesses, where they were like, well, just hang on to it till the next one. So I think we actually have to sort that out and make sure we can figure out, who exactly we're holding money for in escrow. So let's kick that down to the next meeting.
Do we need a motion?
Francois?
We just don't approve anything.
Yeah, no, we don't
Okay.
need a motion.
Okay.
All right, so moving down, opportunities for training for planning board members. CTPC has been doing some really great trainings lately for planning board members, and there's a few of them still coming up. I've been sending them out to everybody. I know we're all super strapped for time, but I hope folks think about going to some of them. I've gone to some of them, they've been pretty good. Every once in a while, there's one that's 2 out of 3 are awesome. That's not
So
bad.
which ones are good?
2 out of 3, you're doing okay. And if cost is a barrier to anyone, that's something we would certainly spend money on in order to get members better trained. So if anybody has anything they're interested in, bring it up, let me know. I think Nate has budget money too, so.
Man, at $40 a head, I can send one to you.
It's 25.
Or 25 too?
1.5. But yeah, if cost is a reason, we can find ways to get that paid for. But I hope everybody considers going. Yeah, Patricia, you're welcome to hit those up too. If Nate can't find room in the budget, we'll find room in the budget.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Can I add something to this meeting?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, we're now at matters not reasonably anticipated by chair.
not reasonably anticipated by the chair, the Healy administration has released the Team Massachusetts Economic Development Plan. It is a plan where they go in and outline what a rural factor would look like, or they've been calling it a success factor for rural, smaller communities. So that is something that we have been pushing for as a community. To see it in this kind of report is one step forward. It's not across the finish line yet, but it's not riveting reading, but it's reading. So if you feel like checking that out, check it out.
Also under matters reasonably not anticipated by chair, we are going to need to make a recommendation to the select board about a new alternative MRPC. Yeah, a new alternate MRPC person. There's a bunch of options. Could be somebody on the select board. Could be Patricia if she was interested. But we need to think about that jointly with the select board, the town administrator, because having the second set of eyes there is important. Also, under matters not reasonably anticipated by chair, and honestly, I should have anticipated this one. There's a good chance that I'm gonna miss a meeting or two, end of December, January, maybe the first January one. We have historically not had a vice chair because of some things that had happened in the past that have made everybody a little gun shy. Is there anybody who would be acceptable of taking, we can call it a time-limited vice chairship to run through February, in case I end up on, extended paternity leave? I'm only planning on being away from everything for a couple weeks, and I'll be reachable, you know, unless stuff gets weird. But just in case, to be covering the bases, I think we should consider that.
Will you have a quorum? If you're gone and Francois' gone at the same time.
As long as John's there.
Francois is gonna be on too?
I think it's important for people to realize I am actually out starting next week and will not return until mid-January.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I'll be out for an extended period of time too.
We would still have a quorum. So where it would matter, and I would obviously give support, is if a co-location application came in. But even then, like if a co-location application came in, there's a chance we might need to have an off-cycle, really inconvenient emergency meeting to buy ourselves time, even if we just meet to say it's complete or it's not complete.
I'll do that, I can do that, just, especially if you can give me the backup.
Okay. So can we do a time-limited motion? Do you care if it's time-limited?
I don't care.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion for, Mr. Holman as vice chair?
Holmans.
Holmans, excuse me.
I'll make that motion.
Do we hear a second?
I second the motion.
Hearing a first and a second, any discussion? All right, calling a vote.
DAC aye.
Steiger, aye.
Monroe, aye.
Can I vote on that?
Yeah, I believe you can vote on yourself for that. Excellent, so congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair. In the unlikely event that we have to schedule a completely inconvenient emergency meeting because somebody drops an application on us before the holidays and we only have 10 days to respond,
Now we're covered.
you'll be the first person to know about it.
Christopher,
Also throwing that out there just as a reminder to everybody, we are expecting that we're gonna see one or two of those applications in the very near future. We've had a lawyer reach out to us and say that it's coming, and I wouldn't be completely surprised if it did get dropped on like the 22nd of Christmas because you only get 10 days to respond to it.
can I ask you a quick question regarding to that?
Yeah.
Which, number one is which tower are we talking about?
We're talking about,
Main Street or Gardner Road?
Main Street.
Main Street, co-location on Main Street.
Yeah.
That's the one that the town owns?
No.
Not the town, I'm sorry, the one on,
It's
One behind
Vertex.
my house. Now, would that be
Yeah.
the one off Brigham Street?
would that be a conflict for me?
Takes time.
Is it my-
And if you're gonna.
Yeah, but you can still call the meeting and then
Okay,
recuse
cause
yourself.
I'm the better and I'm not supposed to vote on that.
Yeah, you could call the meeting and then recuse yourself.
Okay, but
So-
maybe we wouldn't have enough
Drive by those
members
two
then.
so many times.
That's an
Yes,
interesting
yeah,
point though,
it's
because
my dad.
again, I don't think we would have a quorum if you're not available, Bill is not able to participate because of the
I don't know
conflict of
about it.
interest.
Yeah.
I'm not available, that only leaves Erica and, John DeMalia.
Well, it's a special permit, Peter.
Peter?
I'm sorry, say again?
It's a special permit related vote, so Peter comes into play on it.
Oh, Peter, I'm sorry, yes, Peter would be.
I thought he
yeah,
called
but-
you Peter.
Yeah, and for acceptance, I would have to look and,
You still need a supermajority though, right?
I would have to look and see if you need a super majority for acceptance. You do for approval, I don't know if you do for acceptance. But either way, this is, by doing this, we at least have one more variable that we can control. There's still potentially variables we can't control, so
Right.
we at least try.
Going back to my note, because you guys
Okay.
just approved their,
Do you know, what the state of the building of this tower is in? Because I haven't seen anything going up and down or see any
I
like
haven't seen anything on
development there.
either one of them.
The select board approved their decommissioning agreement about 2 meetings ago. After that, they were cooking with fire, so they should be moving pretty soon.
Yeah, I don't know if they were already working with Duffy or.
No, which one was that?
Apologize.
Vertex.
Vertex?
Yeah, I don't know if they're working with Duffy yet. That would be something we'd have to check.
Would you
But-
like me to follow up with Duffy, cause we share an office?
Well, yeah, it just, ask, that's true. Just ask Duffy to let us know when you see something about either of the towers. Because that'll also be a pretty good indication that we're gonna have co-location applications dropped on us.
Co-location.
And do we have anything regarding the tower that is, across the field? Cause
Yeah.
there's any co-location, I'm sorry, any carriers going up there?
So
Would they
the-
still have to go in with us?
Nate?
Go ahead. Nate.
So this has been a nightmare. After working with the town administrator in Rutland to determine a couple of different factors that we needed to determine, including a considerable issue about noise levels and the Telecommunications Act. Like, we're talking about things that I 100% know very little about. We wrote up the RFP, got it over to legal. Legal then kind of sat on it, and they sat on it for 3 months. And then last week got back to me, we've got many apologies over it.
Oh.
And last week they got back to me noting that they're having easement issues. So now I have to go and dig through all of the documentation that we've had for the last 2 years and find the easement and the vote, because they couldn't find it at the Register of Deeds. After I get them that, I'm hoping that they send us back the RFP and we get it out relatively quickly. 30 to 60 days from there, we'll know more, but that's where we
You're
are.
talking the communications tower up there in Gardner
Yes.
Road?
'Cause
No, I
there's-
was always told that we couldn't put any carriers on it because it was federally funded, and that was one of the, was built into the, so I don't know, that's what I was told.
No one's told us that one yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are some potential legal hurdles because of the zoning issues,
Yeah.
because it's not in an allowable area, it's not an allowed parcel. And they would have to do the analysis to show whether or not the Telephone Communications Act would apply to people who are co-locating equipment. And then the spectrum rules say, you can get an expedited special permit process for co-location of equipment if you're not changing the dimensions of the tower or the footprint of the installation, which is potentially an issue there because.
That's what the equipment.
Yeah, I don't know if they set the footprint up in a way where you could just drop in equipment there without modifying it, cause like the commercial towers, they got built with these large fenced-in areas.
Right.
Specifically to exploit that regulation, so that you can be like, we're not changing the footprint, it's already in the fenced-in area.
Right.
Whereas that tower was set up primarily for
It's
emergency
small.
communications.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's enough area in there to put the equipment that drives the backup generators and that kind of stuff without changing the footprint. And if you change the footprint, you don't get the exceptions. So there's a lot of legal heavy lifting for someone to do.
And additionally, on top of that, a secondary issue is we are getting, on our new tower, we currently have used equipment. The Rutland Regional Dispatch Center received a grant to get new equipment. That should be going up in the spring. We don't know the noise floor of the new equipment, so that's what we've been working with legal counsel on.
Why didn't new equipment just go? Oh, I hate this every time.
It was supposed to be done years
It's been
ago.
like decades of stupid. Sorry.
No comment.
Alright, so I believe that's all of the matters not anticipated by chair. Anybody, anything else from anybody on the board?
I'm all set.
I just wanted to ask Nate to kindly keep me in the loop regarding to the AG's response on the outstanding bylaws, if and when we receive them, perchance during the period of time that I'm out.
Candace told me today that she's anticipating something on the 19th, but like I told you the other day, we are not alone in this, and colleagues of mine at town administrator meetings have been mentioning how this is a bigger issue than just Hubbardston's best bylaw.
Yeah. I also brought it up with Ann Goby at the rural caucus night.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All I'm asking, Nate, here is I understand the situation. All I'm asking though is that if you hear something, even though I'm not around, please do send me an email or just be posted.
Interesting aside, I got, and I can't say who it was yet, but I got a request from somebody to get a copy of our stuff from the BEST bylaw to potentially use as a model because they were facing a BEST project, so we very much were one of the first to go along and set that up, so I think other people are gonna look at it.
Yeah.
I gave it to a community as well.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Alright, so if nobody has anything else, I'd like to call, any other public comments?
I'll make that motion.
Alright, so we have a motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
I will second.
Calling the vote,
One more time.
Dak, aye.
Monroe, aye.
Francois?
I still like the party.